Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. Thanks for joining the session today. My name is Deepak Anupalli. I'm the co-founder and head of product engineering at Wavemaker. A little bit about my journey. I've been working on application software products since almost 2 decades now, specializing in building Java EE, middleware, and scalable application platforms. Almost a decade ago, we found with the rise of cloud and mobile adoption. So there were many gaps in application development, especially in scaling them to growing needs for user base, and so these gaps and the way how applications built post the cloud and mobile era had a direct and indirect impact on the way businesses grow, the kind of teams are created, and the culture and several aspects, and that is exactly where we conceived Wavemaker to address these gaps in application development, where we kind of help in accelerating the application development, not only just addressing the development needs, but also in kind of helping organizations to innovate the way how they develop applications. So basically, in the last decade, or probably in the whole 2 decades of my experience and with Waymaker's journey in helping application development, we learned and we kind of evolved. So today we will talk about some of these experiences, and most importantly, what we are going to do today. We are going to talk about what every enterprise must ask its low-code vendor, right? Whether you are in the phase of considering to moving a low-code platform, choosing one, or probably you are already working with a low-code platform. So these are some of the things or questions that you need to definitely ask yourselves as well as the low-code vendor, right? So this is an interesting anecdote, or you would have heard this phrase by Mark Anderson: "Software is eating the world." So in the current situation, especially what we have seen in the last 1 year, the way low code is being talked about, and organizations are rushing to kind of either use one, evaluate one, or help identify a low code platform for their development needs or modernization needs, is becoming more and more evident. And that's exactly what is low code is eating the software, which is kind of very relevant today as we see. However, as we embark this journey of identifying a low-code platform, so there is a lot of confusion. There are several, options out there, and probably not all low-code platforms are the same. So you basically, encounter these no-code kind of platforms where they are built for enabling citizen developers, or those who are very business focused, to build productivity applications. So these could be very specific to an industry like insurance, where you may wanted to speed up the way the claims are processed or underwriting happens, or there are marketing based productivity platforms which will help you speed up the way how you do the reach out, do surveys. So essentially, there are a lot of automation, spreadsheet based automation, kind of platforms of the likes of AppSheet, Airtable, Honeycode. So you would hear a lot of names. So these are basically the ones which will fit into a no code kind of a category. Then when we move on to these workflow based right application use cases where you see low code for business users or business developers. So these platforms, a good number of them come from a BPM kind of a background where they have enabled the workflow based app development or process automation kind of use cases where they would very neatly solve order processing, decision management kind of applications, right? And they fit into this kind of use case. Uh, Whereas when it comes to mainstream application development, so more and more low code platforms today, they are moving or kind of leaning more towards addressing the needs of a developer. As with the success of low code platforms enabling citizen development kind of use cases, we are seeing a paradigm shift where low code vendors are adding more and more capabilities to enable development teams to kind of embrace low code platforms. So the kind of expectation in terms of capabilities from these low code platforms are typically they need to support transaction processing or integration with several systems within enterprise, or basically building modern kind of interaction using web and mobile. So this is typically the kind of classification or categorization we see in low code platforms, right? And what we have seen from our experience working with several prospects in the past, working with several customers of our own, what we have noticed is a lot of enterprise IT teams are actually looking to adopt low-code platforms for their mainstream application development. And and very interestingly, if you can see from some of the kind of demands or expectations on the platform, so we kind of tend to see that they are really asking about how the low code platform can coexist with their existing development practices, or how they can connect to the existing systems in an enterprise, or how it can kind of adapt to the existing guidelines of an organization or compliance needs what are set against the IT policy, right? So these are kind of very interesting to see that the low code platforms, the expectation on the low code platforms is pretty high, and the consideration for low code platforms to solve a good variety of real development use cases is very clear, right? So with that said, let's take a step back, right, and look at if you are in the process of evaluating a low-code platform, or using one, or you have used one in the past, right? What are these critical questions that you need to ask yourself, or the low-code vendor you are talking to, right? So these are some of the key aspects. So we have identified, a bunch of them, almost 6 of them. Today we will discuss in this session, right? It's very clear: is the low-code platform really built for developers, right? Uh, so today, as we just saw that, you know, low-code platforms are basically being considered for accelerating development is very clear. Not only that, they are basically, kind of identified to bridge the gap to higher technical talent needed to kind of do heavy lifting of application development. Then most importantly, to tackle modernization use cases, today as we see, a good number of enterprises, almost everybody who had a lot of existing software systems, ERP, CRM systems, which are being used for decades. They are going through the journey of modernizing them and then kind of rebuilding to address the newer use cases as the business change. Very interestingly, one of the recent survey found that only 20% of the use cases for low-code platforms are for actual citizen development enablement, business-focused users building the application. The rest of the whole portion is actually being put to use for serious application development, right? So let's look at what are the key elements that you would look at a low-code platform if you would like your development team to adopt a low-code platform, right? So one of the things is identifying the kind of developers and their skill set, those who are going to leverage or use the low-code platform is crucial, right? And with that, essentially what happens is when you are actually evaluating a low-code platform, you would like to look at the capabilities which this low-code platform offers, because it should really appeal to the developers. And not only that, it should empower the developer to do more, right, using the low code platform. But it doesn't have to kind of take a new direction, or it doesn't have to kind of reskill your existing developers to be able to adopt the low code platform. So that's a key aspect. Basically, these low code platforms should appeal to the developers so that they can embrace them and adopt them for their application development needs. So this is a very interesting aspect. Almost, a lot of emphasis, or basically there is not much of emphasis on code being created by low-code platforms. Many of them don't talk about real code being created, or the ability to create code which is readable and which could probably be modifiable by the development teams, right? If you look at any serious application, almost if you are looking at using a low code platform out of the box, creating an application with widgets, templates, or pre-built components, right? So it is quite not possible, right? By using the factory made templates and widgets to build a real world application is not feasible, right? So inevitably there has to be a lot of integrations, there should be customization, right? And that is what gives you the power to build your applications, right? So that is exactly where you kind of see that the code becomes a key aspect. There has to be a code behind strategy, in case if you are looking for a low code. So one is relying on open standards based technology stack, right, gives you the right level of maturity for your software, right? So the open standards platforms or open standards libraries have taken years to perfect what they offer to the developers. Take the most popular open source frameworks like Angular or Spring or Hibernate. It took years for them to evolve and reach the level of maturity, right? So by using a low-code platform, you don't have to reinvent the wheel in using a completely different kind of software or proprietary code, which is going to give you the same kind of capabilities. So essentially, by leveraging open standards based stack, you don't need to reskill or reinvent the wheel, right? So another important aspect, when you have open standards based approach, you there is no disruption of the existing tool set, right? So you could make use of the existing tools and existing development expertise which has been built already in your organization. For example, let's say if your testing team builds Selenium test cases, right? Or UI test cases for HTML code, they would continue to test the applications using the same approach. Otherwise, if you get a low code platform and if you have to completely reinvent the wheel, redo the way how your testing works, then it will be total disruption. So the same is applicable for several stages of your application delivery lifecycle, be it testing, be it debugging, be it performance validation. Can a low code platform built application be put to use using app dynamics for performance monitoring, right? Can I deploy the low code built application to my own Kubernetes cloud? So these are the standard kind of questions being asked, and these are very important things to look at when you are picking a low code platform. And most importantly, without code, right, your app development teams are totally locked into low code vendors component software, which could be a challenge in terms of intellectual property, and also it could lead to increased costs over a period of time, right? So, what we learned, from our experiences, working with some of our existing customers, right? So they have very stringent compliance requirements. Basically, when a low-code platform develops or generates code or application, right? The artifacts, the code, they have to go through a very stringent verification and validation process before they go out to their customers or to the users into production, right? So when we were working with a large, financial analytics company based out of North America, so their IT team had put a clear challenge in front of us. Okay, so the code which is generated has to go through the static and dynamic code tools like Sonar or check marks, and the application has to get validated without any issues, right? And any major vulnerabilities in terms of bugs, right? And also from a security standpoint, the applications had to withstand penetration testing. Unless these two are check marked, right, they cannot take the application into production, right? So with this kind of expectation, it is very clear that using the right kind of technology stack, the right kind of architecture for the application goes a long way in making the right decision for your low code platform. Also, what happens is not only that the code and artifacts have to go through these stringent validation process. Many times enterprises have made investment in building their own custom software, right? So they would have built their own components, they would have built the teams who have worked and created very specific business components and applications. And by bringing a low code platform, you cannot just throw away whatever has been done in the past. So when we were working with one of a motor insurance company based out of California, so they have built a lot of business and UI integrated component for their motor insurance kind of application use cases. And one of the ask was, can we reuse these components or widget in your low code platform so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? And also they have created the design guidelines for their application, and they would wanted to reuse all of them into the low code platform, right? So these go a long way. The ability to coexist with the existing application components, with existing well-known framework out in the market, it makes it a very good use case for a right low-code platform. So let's, I think, yeah. So uh, in terms of the scalability for applications, right? The scalability of an application is deep rooted into the architecture, or basically the technology used. And no application becomes, scalable right away, or even if you were to build application from scratch using the best of the technology, scaling it to a large and growing use case comes up with its own nuances, a lot of expertise, and ensuring that each and every layer of your application scales as it is supposed to be, right? So in terms of scaling the applications, today we see that modern applications use microservices based architecture. They have evolved from monolithic apps to becoming microservices, where the front end and the back end are completely decoupled using a REST API layer, and you kind of break down the larger applications into smaller services, so that if multiple teams are working on these huge applications, they could actually build them and deliver them independently, and with less dependencies, and they can move much faster in terms of updating these applications, right? So and also from an architectural standpoint, scalable applications, they do not use any persistence, sorry, they don't use any in-memory persistence. Basically they have to rely on a database or a NoSQL kind of storage, so that they can be scaled horizontally and deployed onto a cloud infrastructure, right? So fundamentally the architectural choices made for building your application lets you to scale it to growing user base, a large user base. So in terms of data or user scalability, so from our experience, right, when we were working with a North America based law firm, what we have learned is they have a very large system, a legacy kind of a system, which had a very old DB2 kind of a database, where they have stored several decades of data, which is sitting there, and applications were built, and it is in a stage where it needs to be completely rebuilt in order to make sure it is really usable, right? So we could help them build these microservices kind of small scalable applications by breaking down the whole monolithic into a smaller focused services, like profile. The law firm basically saves information about the several users, their businesses, their contracts, and a lot of information which is very specific to running their organizations, right? So all of this could be possible, so that the architecture for the low code platform brings in the decoupling of multiple layers, ability to create REST APIs, so that these services can interact with each other, and different teams can build and deliver them independently, and basically achieve the scale what is needed, right? And another use case, a very important aspect of scalability, not only comes in terms of scaling it to the multiple users, but sometimes applications need to deal with a lot of data, right? So in this particular use case, one of our partners built a mobile application to help a government in Liberia in Africa to help save deforestation. Basically, they would want to ensure that they could track the trees which are planted across hectares of land. They were able to come up with an interesting system where they would tag these trees using RFID, and the officials would go have the RFID, and the mobile app can just scan the RFID, enumerate the tree in its life cycle in multiple phases. So now imagine that we were talking about millions of trees being enumerated over a period of time, and they were able to track hectares of land with the trees and able to solve this problem. So now they got control of the entire life cycle of a tree, from getting planted to becoming a log and then getting moved, using a simple mobile based solution which can scale to millions of users. And also from a capability standpoint, they had to build this offline capability wherein when you go into a forest, basically you don't have internet connection, right? You are basically off the grid. So the mobile app has to support offline way of interacting, completing the entire transaction without the network, and syncing back to the servers when they are back to their office, right? So these are really big asks from a low-code platform, and only if you can think of a very customizable model for application development where we could leverage existing software pieces, existing frameworks. So you could basically solve these kind of complex use cases hand in hand with a low-code platform, where the low-code platform gives you the ability to bootstrap application development faster, create the interfaces, and whatever is needed to consume the data and deliver the data in the form of application. So in terms of the other key asks from a low-code platform, security, enterprise grade security is a key aspect, and this is a very crucial topic, and there is no end to what we can talk about security. Security goes very hand in hand with architectural best practices. Unless you put the right architecture in place for a low code platform, you don't get the right amount of security. Understanding security and data governance is pretty hard. It's basically a big ask when you look at security from a low code platform. And just to give you a data point, right? As you can see here, one of the top causes of application delivery delay is apparently security. And in a conversation with analysts, what we have learned is typically it takes a few months. Let's say you use low code platform, in a couple of months you could probably develop an application, but on an average in a large enterprise it takes 8 to 12 months for an application to get clearance from IT to go live after clearing the compliance and governance rules, right, and the policies. So which is a big deal, right? Though you got the accelerated development with a low code platform, ensuring that all the boxes are ticked from a security compliance standpoint is crucial. And a low code platform should ensure that it not only cut shorts the development cycle, but it also addresses the needs for security. So uh, if you look at Application security is not an afterthought. It's not a layer that you build on top after you develop your application, right? It goes deep rooted into the layers of application. So security is needed all the way from a database layer where you access the database to the backend services, which basically give you the business logic, the APIs, and the UI components, which are basically kind of giving out the content, right? Protecting the application across all the layers is very much important, right? And then and another aspect of security is enterprises use a wide variety of identity and access management systems, and the local platform and the application has to ensure it integrates with the identity management system in onboarding the users, or roles, or the existing permissions, role-based access information, and ensure that it basically uses the existing security infrastructure to secure your application, right? Uh, Another important aspect, if you look at the web applications, on an average, web apps use 50 to 70 third-party open source libraries. That's a good number of third-party libraries, especially if you are using open technology stack, right? Addressing the vulnerabilities in the third party libraries, keeping them up to date, making sure that you are frequently updating these libraries and updating your application becomes crucial in securing the application, right? So the developer should be free of all these nuances, and the platform should be able to take care of all of these on behalf of the developer if you are actually using a low code platform, right? Uh, and in terms of the visibility, right? See the for permissions and access control, the low-code platform should be able to give the right amount of visibility for the developer, the right amount of control, that okay, he knows exactly which role and which user gets to access what kind of data. So the control has to be offered by the low-code platform to the developer. And in terms of data security and governance, right? So that is exactly where the visibility is needed in ensuring that your applications meet the data governance and compliance requirements. Developers should be able to define the right access controls in the applications for data access, right? So this essentially it makes it a very challenging aspect for a low-code platform to tick all the boxes from a security standpoint, right? So just a small use case when we were working with one of a large UK's insurance broker. Basically, the app which is built using our platform had to be put to test through a white hat security testing partner, so who will certify the application for vulnerabilities. So as per their IT policy, the application has to clear the entire audit and penetration testing without any P1 or major issues, right? So seamlessly, the application has to go through all these nuances, and across all the layers, the tool or the platform should be able to clear the security risks for your application. So this is definitely a big ask because we are talking about low-code platforms put to use for serious application development, and these applications are deployed and delivered by the IT for their users, right? So this is crucial and an important aspect which should be asked and validated. Sorry. Yeah, the last sorry, probably one of the other aspects in terms of minimizing your risk for digital transformation efforts, right? So as we talked about earlier, low code platforms are basically put to use for accelerating the development as well as a lot of digital transformation initiatives, right? One of the key things when using a low code platform for modernization is leveraging the existing assets, right? You cannot just rip and replace existing investments or existing assets, right? Integrating with these existing systems to be able to provide modern workflows, modern processes, and leveraging what has been done, right, to the best possible extent is what gives you the acceleration for your modernization efforts. And also, that's probably the best way to succeed in terms of the modernization efforts, right? So naturally, by reusing a lot of these, especially you might have existing databases or these ERP CRM systems who expose some kind of APIs. Probably they have SOAP web services or very rudimentary kind of ways of extracting data, but still these can be leveraged to extract data, integrate with these systems, and build modern applications using a low-code platform, right? And minimizing the dependency on skills, or basically a lot of modernization efforts today, if you look at in enterprises, are carried by partners, by vendors who are helping organizations to redo or modernize their existing systems. So by using a low code platform, essentially you are minimizing the risk for your modernization journey, right? And hand in hand, by bringing a platform which your IT could actually use, you are empowering the IT to carry out the transformation efforts, and in the process, it could build in-house expertise in terms of modernization, and it goes a long way in succeeding in all your modernization efforts, right? So let me talk about a few use cases in terms of modernization where we have seen success in modernization. We have several elements of reuse in our low-code platform, which will help our customers. In this particular case, when we were working with Flanagan, who is a Toronto-based food processing and a retail kind of distribution company. So they had Oracle Forms-based application with a database, and a lot of business logic has been embedded in the form of procedures. And they kind of used this application for more than a decade, or probably a couple of decades, and they are heavily dependent on the data and probably a lot of workflows and business logic, right? And rebuilding, rewriting the whole thing all the way from the database to the business logic could have been a very a difficult task, right? And probably time taking, and may not help them to modernize quickly, right? So what we could do with our low code platform, so we were able to make use of the existing database and the business logic in the form of procedures. APIs were created, and using these modern APIs, the low-code platform was able to rebuild their entire UI application, and not only just a UI based web portal, but the customer could go ahead and create a mobile application making use of the APIs to help their field force to track orders and process the inventory, and kind of accelerate their current processes with the modernization effort. And the important aspect is not only they could modernize it and reuse their existing investments in terms of the current system, but they could really achieve the modernization effort at a very short period of time with a very small IT team. The whole effort was done within 6 weeks by a two people IT team. That was a very big win for the customer. In one another interesting scenario, one of Australia's large waste management company, JJ Richards. So they were able to leverage their existing systems. Probably it is a CRM or an ERP system. They could retain the existing system and the database which is already put to use. They were able to build very high fidelity mobile applications. So they were rebuilding their partner registration portal. Right, so they could completely rebuild this system, create a new and modern web application, and also they could put a mobile application in place leveraging the same APIs, where they could track their field force. Basically, being a waste management company, they have a lot of field force. They have several trucks which carry the waste, and basically they kind of reuse and create the eco-friendly kind of products. So for their operations, they were able to build mobile applications, and surprisingly, these applications are needed for their operations 24 by 7. And all of this is done in their own infrastructure. They were able to not only develop applications, but deploy these apps using the low code single click deploy capabilities onto their own infrastructure, right? From an end-to-end, standpoint, reusing the existing infrastructure in place, accelerating the development, creating modern, rich mobile and UI interfaces to deploying it for scaling to their users, they have leveraged the low-code platform to achieve what they wanted. I think so. This is definitely the most important, or the last checklist item. The low code platform should be able to be appealing in terms of the licensing model. It should be affordable and scalable for your application use cases, right? So there's a lot of confusion in the way low code platforms are licensed and how they sell. In fact, you hear very strong kind of opinions in the market. Definitely, there is a bit of complexity in understanding the licensing model by different products. Especially, there are challenges as you build more and more applications and scale them. Low-code platforms tend to be very expensive. Most of them have this kind of a challenge, right? So identifying which is the right strategy, or which is the right fitment in terms of the pricing for your needs is the most important thing. So if you see a lot of low-code platforms out there, there are several approaches or several models in which the licensing is done. There are platforms which offer simple developer-based licensing. Some of them offer based on the applications or possibly the number of applications you have rolled out or deployed, right? And the number of instances, basically how many instances of the software is running within your organization, is one way of looking at the licensing model, right? There are several other ways, as you can see. Even the licensing goes deeper into the kind of components you use in your applications, the database objects, or the workflows pages, and there are several other aspects on which the licensing is done. Definitely, there are a good number of platforms which even do licensing based on the number of end users. Once you deploy your application and make it available for your end users, so how many users are actually using these platforms is also being considered for licensing. So I think there are challenges in terms of, as you scale your app, you shouldn't be worried about the low-code platform costs, which is a key aspect. And costs should not be disproportionate, as in if you are building a simple app but for a large user base versus you're building a very complex application for a very core business use case. So the cost should not be disproportionate, and definitely the detailed object and usage based pricing model will inhibit low code adoption. So you need to really look at a good licensing model which gives enterprises the best ROI for their platform investment. So in summary, I think making a decision around some of these six aspects that we have just talked about, right? So the ability to kind of create code is essential. There is a lot of emphasis on making sure that the use of open standards based technology stacks goes a long way in terms of maturity of your applications and the software which is built into your applications. Scalability is key. You are not building an app just for a small set of users. You always want your apps to grow and your business to grow and get more and more users for your application. Security is crucial, and it's a deal breaker if you don't have the right kind of security. And making sure the low code platform offers you the a kind of future proofing, minimizing the risk in terms of your modernization initiatives is key. Yes, of course, the pricing should be easy to understand. It cannot be uncomplicated, right? So in essence, what we see as a low-code platform today is not, just a tip of the iceberg in terms of, the development acceleration and visual drag and drop, or the integrations are only one aspect, which is I would just call it the tip of the iceberg. But beneath the surface, when you just go deeper into your application which is built, these are the things you should look at: whether it scales, whether it meets your security and compliance needs, and whether it is able to give you the best ROI for your long-term investments and modernization efforts. So that's where I think we just came to the end of this session.